Welcome to the Voice of Retail podcast. My name is Michael LeBlanc, and I am your host. This podcast is produced in conjunction with Retail Council of Canada. Just ahead of its keynote at Retail Council of Canada's STORE2025 conference on June 3rd in Toronto, IBM Consulting partner Karl Haller discusses AI's transformational impact on retail, claiming it will be the biggest change in our working lifetimes. Drawing on his extensive retail background with brands like Brooks Brothers, Tommy Hilfiger, Haller explores how retailers should respond to uncertainty, identifies winning retail formats, and reveals 4 underappreciated retail technology trends reshaping retail operations. Let's listen in now. Karl, welcome to the Voice of Retail podcast, my friend. How are you?
I'm doing all right. Thank you. How are you, Michael?
I'm fantastic having you finally on the mic. I say that like I've been, chasing you for years, but I've been wanting to have you on the podcast for years since we first met. We're part of a community, the Rethink Retail community, and we've crossed paths through them, thanks to them a couple of times. And now you're coming to Toronto. You may have been here before. You're coming to Toronto to be a keynote on the main stage for Retail Council of Canada Store Conference. So our worlds come together, and I'm thrilled that you could join me on the microphone. So thanks so much. Where am I finding you today?
I am in New York City. I like to say we put the G in the GTA.
Yeah, look at you, the local reference. Fantastic. Well, listen, obviously we know each other, but perhaps the folks listening do not know who you are. So tell us a bit about yourself, your background, what you do for a living.
Sure. So I'm a partner with IBM Consulting. I lead our retail and consumer products center of competency. And what that means is that my team and I are able to work with clients all over the world at the intersection of business and technology. And specifically, it's really how retailers and brands can leverage all of the set of capabilities available to them to improve how they run their business. You know, when you boil down what retailers do, we plan, we buy, we make, we move, we market, sell, serve, and operate. And that's been the same for the, almost 30 years I've been in this business. I come out of retail. So I have worked at Brooks Brothers, at The Limited, at Tommy Hilfiger, at Karl Lagerfeld, prior to my time with IBM. And, with IBM now, I kind of work a lot with our middle name, a lot of the business portion of the international business and machines.
Well, you've given me a nice segue to the next question. So, I can't imagine anybody on the planet hasn't heard of IBM, but they may not know the contemporary modern IBM. Tell us a little about scope and scale. And I don't think you're making as many AS400 mainframes as you used to. So tell listeners about IBM.
Those AS400s are still running, surprisingly. I mean, talk about resilience.
No kidding. They don't build them like that anymore, Karl.
They now it is the Z17 mainframe, which is the first mainframe built for AI. I'm not going to talk IBM products because, to be honest, I have a moderate working knowledge of them. But IBM Consulting is a $20 billion consulting firm that sits within one of the world's leading technology companies, which frankly is further backed and driven by one of the only worldwide corporate research organizations that's left. So the biggest piece of our business is IBM Technology. IBM Consulting is the next biggest piece of the business. And then it is still underpinned by IBM Research, which has had about a 25-year run of leading the world in patents and producing Nobel laureates and pretty much every prize related to science and intelligence that you can get.
You guys are really the OG when I think of what was it, Watson, or I think of Deep Blue. Like you guys are doing AI before anybody even really thought of the concept. So it's really special to have you, an organization, and you've got the background, and the organization has got that heritage, and it's not just heritage, right? You're in it every single day. Now, you're going to be on the stage talking about AI. We're not going to spend our entire time together talking about that because I want to leave some of your amazing insights for the folks attending the show. Your episode or your description for your for your talk is biggest inflection, but includes this biggest inflection point in 50 years when you're talking about AI. So my first obvious question was, what was the last one?
So the 50-year reference was specifically around the advent of computing. And this kind of goes back to, I'll say, when AI was hitting its Netscape moment in late 2023, I was thinking about, what came before and how big is it? And, they're kind of, depends on who you talk to. Some people say, oh, this is the biggest wave since, for Internet 1.0, 25, 30 years ago. Some people think of it as it's as big as when computers took hold, 50 years ago. Some people will say it's as big as industrialization and electrification, more than 100 years ago. And that last one's a little too far for me. I kind of went back to this idea of the 70s when computers really were moving, I'll say, from the lab to being tools business people used. And I was actually imagining, somewhere in some office building, probably at IBM, there was a group of people sitting around drawing up use cases for computers, just as we've been doing, for the last 18 months with AI. So, I like to look back to the advent of computing, which is farther than when most of us were working, but not so far that it feels like it's out of a history text.
Yeah, I mean, I remember the days in my career where, we were very hesitant to accept this new thing called email, and we were still couriering big disks with graphic files and things on it.
Yeah.
And it was really, it was a big unlock, right? I mean, it was really, it's funny to think back. It's very similar. You mentioned electricity. I mean, it was 20, 30, 40 years before electricity actually made a difference in manufacturing because nobody knew how to use it or had the machines to adapt to it. Like, it wasn't an overnight thing. It's probably not going to be that way with AI. Let's talk about the hype cycle. Like, we were talking about this. I was talking about on the stage yesterday, and I always kind of ask, are we overhyped, underhyped, or right amount of hype? I see these statements on PowerPoint slides about, how amazing it is. But beyond replicating like 1,000 good interns, how really transformative do you think AI is going to be?
So without sounding like I'm giving into the hype cycle, I believe AI will be the biggest transformation that any of us have seen in our careers. Now, there may be bigger ones coming at some point. There are all sorts of people who are super smart at IBM who are working on quantum computing, which is going to be another wave of transformation. But I will say, certainly, for the time that I've been working and probably the time that almost anyone right now has been working, we're at the early stages of what is the largest transformation any of us will see. And wow. And it's really, we're still. And
you've seen a lot too, right? You've seen a lot. I mean, you've lived through.
I have.
And I was thinking,
I was around in Ecom 1.0, and even a little bit before that. I remember the people printing out the emails and handwriting their responses.
I forgot about that. I had a box. Yeah. That is very funny. All right. I'm going to leave AI with that kind of statement because you're going to get to flesh it out to the folks on the stage coming in here in Toronto in person. But while I got you on the mic, let's talk about strategy during these times of tremendous disruption. We were talking about it off mic, and it's just a dynamic time. That's a charitable term. We went through the COVID era. Now we're going through whatever it is we're going through now. How should retailers think about even planning in a world where, the next day things can change? I mean, that's what, to my mind, is the most, what retail CEOs are telling me is the most, listen, you tell me what the tariff is, I'll build a business model around it. But how do I deal with this level of uncertainty? Like, what are you hearing, and what is you and the IBM advising when you sit down with leaders?
So, I mean, I cannot speak specifically to tariffs. In the last 20 minutes, I don't actually know what's changed with tariffs, but I'm sure something has. We are at a very interesting time. So I'll give you a couple of quick answers. So one, with regard to, I'll say AI and the technology that technology-driven capabilities that are being presented to us, even though my background is in strategy, I think this is the time for doing more than planning. You kind of have to have just enough of it, but you should be out there doing, rather than, if you've got $1 million to spend $1 million on 100 MVPs. Don't spend $1 million on an AI strategy project, because it's going to be out of date by the time you've done it in the 3 months it's going to take to do it. So I think that's one perspective. I think in terms of the broader environment, I go back to, again, my early days as a strategy consultant were around scenario planning and having an understanding of what are the things you should be looking at to get a sense of which way the market is moving. And I think it's less about the actual future and what are the indicators that can cause you to take that bet. Because anytime you're thinking about doing something where you don't know the facts, you're taking a bet. And you just have to kind of figure out what are those indicators and how many of them do you need to be how far along to get yourself comfortable.
It's such a great approach. I was having a discussion yesterday, and we were talking about sustainability and climate impact. And I said, imagine if only half of what they say about climate impact is true. What would that look like? Imagine it's 10%. And then wow, that's true. If it's not all the way as bad as it could be, if it's half as bad, that still is pretty meaningful. Maybe I'll develop a strategy scenario based on that. Let's shift gears a little bit. So up here in Canada, there's been lots of talk about the demise of Hudson's Bay. I spent 7 years there, and I often say it would have demised itself 20 years ago if it wouldn't have sold its mass merchant sellers to Target. It gave it an extra 20 years that basically were squandered. But I want to talk not about Hudson's Bay with you, but about looking across the retail spectrum around a format that is winning. And department stores, hard to say they're winning in terms of a format. Our friend Steve Dennis, my partner, would say, 20 years of consecutive decline. Is there any format that you're paying attention to that you think is, wow, this is here now and here for the future?
I think the format question, I think, is a difficult one, because you can find in almost every sector of retail, you can find people doing better or worse relative to where the format is. So, department stores are, one of the worst performing sectors, but there are some department stores that are performing better and worse than others. I just had a chance to visit the new Printemps store in Lower Manhattan, which is a different take. Now, granted, it's a luxury department store, so it's not a mainstream department store, but it's a different take on a department store that I think is bringing something new and unique to the market. Similar to how Nordstrom brought something new and unique to the market when they opened their flagship, with what's now terrible timing because it opened in the winter of 2019, 2020, and they're kind of just getting that back on their feet. In terms of, so I tend to look at kind of some of the companies that I see that are doing interesting and innovative things, and I will say I also look at them with a lens of IBM. So what they're doing that is interesting with I'll say a technology bent or a new capabilities bent. Some of the ones that come to mind are Walmart, who, for being the biggest retailer, is remarkably nimble and agile. And when you look at what they're rolling out in terms of technology and how they're enabling the store, all of their store associates, as well as the corporate functions. When I look at a PepsiCo and see what they're doing as well, and, people forget PepsiCo, I think, has the second largest fleet of trucks in North America. They have tens of thousands of frontline workers that are actually making sales and merchandising decisions when they're visiting all of their customers. I look at some of what Unilever is doing. I look at some of what Kroger is doing to change the way they operate more than just changing the way the store looks.
Talk about, last question for you. 3 things about modern retail or retail technology that are flying under the radar screen, maybe underappreciated by retailers, maybe underappreciated by the folks listening to this that you want to serve up and highlight.
All right. So 3 things. I'm going to give you 4 actually, because I've got 4 that are right.
A bonus. You're a retailer.
I'm going to give you a bonus.
Give me a bonus.
That's right. You get a BOGO. So first, and this will be specific to AI, is that we have to change the focus from words, pictures, and code into other data sets. I think for retailers, the first one to focus on is numbers. And if you think about what all of us do with whatever AI tool of choice is, we're predicting the next word in a string of words, or we're creating an image out of it, and some of us might be creating code. But you can predict the same way you can predict words and the next word in a string of words, you can predict a number and the next string of numbers. And if that just happens to be your daily SKU by store forecast, there are hundreds of millions of dollars of value to be unlocked by getting that down to a low single-digit error rate. And from some of the work I've seen starting out of IBM Research and with some of the what I call large number models, but most people are not calling large number models, that's the range of possibility. So if you can get low single-digit forecast, that is a huge win. And frankly, it goes beyond numbers. It's weather patterns, it's movement of people, it's the signals coming from your censored devices or your IoT landscape. It could be chemical or molecular data that can assist in product formulations. And it's how all those different types of data come together to create a usable pattern in something, like trend forecasting. So that's the second one, is getting the first one is getting from words, pictures, and codes into numbers and other things. Number 2 is the need to bring together all of the other technologies that AI can make better use of. So things like computer vision or IoT devices or robotics or biometrics or electronic shelf labels or retail media or even spatial computing. All of those are interesting computing platforms. They can both produce data and consume information back and are ripe for AI. And because there are going to be so many of them, in a retail organization of 500 stores,
sure,
that you'll need AI to make sense of them.
It's almost like AI is becoming an operating system if you think about it broadly.
It is that AI is starting to become an operating system, and frankly, you didn't know this, but you're leading me into the third one, which is what is the operating system for AI? Because all of these new applications that are going to be built over the next few years, IBM's prediction is that there will be over 1 billion new applications built by 2028, are going to need to run on something. And that means they're going to need to be provisioned. That means they're going to need to be managed, which is, all that stuff in the weeds of technology, monitoring, maintenance, enhancements, bug fixes, patches, making sure they're safe and secure and transparent. And frankly, most companies, let alone just most retailers, IT organizations struggle to manage the hundreds of apps they run today, let alone another 10,000. So I think we're going to see the biggest change in how IT operates in probably ever. I don't really think we've seen a huge evolution in the 30 years of IT operating.
I was thinking cloud. I thought cloud computing was pretty big, right? Off-prem.
Yeah, it is. Right? Definitely. I agree. That is definitely big. The last thing I would say, and this is not last because it's least important, it's frankly last because I would want to end on it because it's most important, is the need to bring all the people with you on the journey. We are at a point now where the rate of technology and the pace of technology is accelerating faster than our ability to process it, whether that's us as a business or us as a person. And most large retailers employ tens of thousands of people, if not hundreds of thousands of people. And this is going to be the biggest challenge that those retailers' learning and development teams have ever done.
Yeah.
And it's a comprehensive program for everyone from the CEO down to the hourly worker in the store or the distribution center. helping them understand and make use of the set of capabilities that are available to them, and how that it's not just a one-time training that they tick the box on, but this unlock where those individuals keep evolving their knowledge and their ability and their usage over time. I think that, especially for retailers, is probably the biggest challenge we face as an industry.
People, process, and technology. There you go. Yeah, the trifecta. They're right there.
It sure is. I didn't think about it from that, but yes.
Well, listen, it's been fantastic. We're so much looking forward to having you on the stage in advance of that or after that or right now. How do people get in touch with you and learn more about what you do?
Sure. People can find me on LinkedIn, linkedin.com/in/Karl Haller. And people can find IBM, not surprisingly, at IBM.com.
Well, Karl, such a treat to get you on the mic. It's long overdue. Won't be the first time, but it won't be the last time. And looking forward to seeing you again in person up here in Toronto very soon. So until then, be safe, safe travels up to Canada, and wish you and the team continued success. And then, like I said, please join me again on the mic, and let's not make this a one-off journey. Let's make this a continuous journey.
Definitely. Looking forward to it, and I'm looking forward to seeing you in a few weeks.
Thanks for tuning into this episode of The Voice of Retail. If you haven't already, follow on your favorite podcast platform so new episodes will land automatically each week. And be sure and check out my other retail industry media properties, the Remarkable Retail Podcast with Steve Dennis and the Global E-Commerce Leaders Podcast. I'm your host, Michael LeBlanc, Senior Retail Advisor, Keynote Speaker. If you want more content or chat, follow me on LinkedIn. Safe travels, everyone.